Somewhere in America right now, someone is sitting at a red light on their way home from a job they've worked for 11 years, and they're doing quiet math in their head. Not about bills, not about groceries, about how many more years of this there actually are, 20, maybe 30. And for just a second, they feel something close to panic because the honest answer is nobody actually knows. That exact moment happens to millions of people every single day in this country. In cars, in break rooms, during a rushed lunch at a desk, during a text from the boss that lights up the phone at 9 at night, and almost nobody says it out loud. So today we're going to say it out loud, and we're going to do something most personal finance content never actually does. We're going to show you the entire math, start to finish, not just the motivational talk that comes before it. Because there is a 4-phase plan that has quietly moved regular people, teachers, nurses, warehouse workers, people who started with exactly $0 saved, from that red light panic to something most of us were taught was impossible before age 65, freedom before 50, sometimes before 40. By the end of this video, you will know the exact dollar figure you personally need to hit that point, and the 4 phases required to get there in as little as 5 years. Stick around, because Phase 2 alone exposes a statistic about 6-figure earners that is going to change how you look at your own bank account. Before we get into Phase 1, hit that subscribe button. David Marshall Finance publishes a new financial blueprint like this every single week. And if you're serious about getting to freedom faster than the people around you, this channel is where you want to be sitting. My name is David Marshall, and I've spent years breaking down how ordinary people build extraordinary financial lives, not through luck, not through some crypto lottery ticket, but through a repeatable system. Today I'm giving you the entire system, all 4 phases, start to finish. So settle in because we have a lot of ground to cover, and the first thing we need to figure out is what kind of person you actually are with money. In my experience, almost everyone falls into one of 3 categories. There are drifters. People living paycheck to paycheck with no real financial goal at all, just surviving one month and hoping the next one is a little easier. Drifters aren't lazy, most of the time they're exhausted, working hard, and simply never handed a system. There are dreamers, people who actually do have a goal, maybe it's retiring early, maybe it's buying a house outright, but they have no real plan to execute it. It just lives in their head as a nice idea they bring up at dinner parties or scroll past on social media at midnight, feeling that familiar mix of inspiration and guilt. And then there are doers, people with a goal and a clear, specific plan of action sitting behind it, people who treat their finances less like a feeling and more like a project with milestones. Here's the uncomfortable question I want you sitting with for the rest of this video. Which one are you right now, a drifter, a dreamer, or a doer? Because by the time we get through all 4 phases, you're going to have 0 excuse left to stay in either of the first 2 categories. Let's start with Phase 1, and this is the part almost nobody does correctly, defining your freedom figure. Your freedom figure is the exact dollar amount of invested assets you need so that your money, not your job, not your boss, not your alarm clock, is what pays your bills. This is the entire redefinition we need to make before anything else in this plan works. Forget the word retirement for a second. Retirement isn't about age, it's about freedom. It's simply the point where working becomes optional instead of mandatory. So how do you actually calculate your own number? There's a simple formula financial planners have used for decades called the times 25 rule. You take the annual income you want your investments to produce, and you multiply it by 25. Let's make this real instead of theoretical. Picture a nurse named Emily Hart, 31 years old, working 12-hour shifts in Columbus, Ohio. Emily decides she wants $50,000 a year in passive income, enough to fully cover her lifestyle without ever touching a paycheck again. Using the times 25 rule, 50,000 multiplied by 25 gives her a freedom figure of $1.25 million in invested assets. That number is built on something called the 4% Safe Withdrawal Rate, or SWR. It's the idea that if you withdraw around 4% of a properly invested portfolio each year, historically, that portfolio can sustain itself and often keep growing for decades on end. That 4% number is the backbone behind almost every early retirement calculation in modern financial planning. Now here's the part most people get wrong the instant they hear it. They hear $1.25 million and their brain just shuts down. That number feels impossible from where they're standing, but notice something important. We didn't say Emily needs $1.25 million sitting in a savings account in cash. We said invested assets, assets that grow, assets that compound. Assets that, if you do this correctly, get you there faster than you'd expect, especially once you stop obsessing over immediate taxable cash flow and start thinking in terms of long-term growth instead. Let's contrast Emily with someone else for a second, just so the formula really sinks in. Say there's a software developer named Marcus Reyes in Austin, Texas, and Marcus wants a bigger number, $80,000 a year in passive income, because that's what fully replaces his current paycheck. 80,000 multiplied by 25 puts his freedom figure at $2 million exactly. Same formula, same 25 multiplier, completely different result, because the formula bends around your life, not the other way around. That's the entire point of the times 25 rule. It isn't a one-size-fits-all number pulled from a textbook. It's a personal target built entirely around the lifestyle you're actually trying to fund. Write your own number down right now, even if it's rough. Pause the video if you have to. Multiply your desired annual passive income by 25. That's your freedom figure. It is quite possibly the single most important number in your entire financial life, and almost nobody in this country has ever actually sat down and calculated it for themselves. But here's the problem. Knowing your number means absolutely nothing if the foundation underneath it is broken. And for most Americans, that foundation is very, very broken. Phase 2 is where we build that foundation, and I need to show you something first, because I genuinely think it's going to surprise you. 70% of millennials in this country are living paycheck to paycheck right now. Not broke, not unemployed, just one missed check away from real serious trouble. And here's the number that really gets people every time I share it. 40% of six-figure earners are also living paycheck to paycheck. People pulling in $100,000 a year or more, and still one emergency away from a genuine financial crisis. That statistic alone should tell you something important about how this actually works. Building real wealth was never primarily about how much you earn. It's about the system operating underneath the earning, which is exactly what Phase 2 fixes across 4 specific stages. Stage 1 is eliminating bad debt, and it starts with a distinction most people are never taught: the difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is low-interest borrowing that's actually working on your behalf, something tied to an asset that generates cash flow or appreciates in value over time. Think a mortgage on a rental property or a reasonable loan on an income-producing asset. Bad debt is the opposite: consumer debt, high-interest credit card balances, loans on things that lose value the moment you drive them off the lot or carry them out of the store. That is the debt quietly keeping drifters exactly where they are. To attack bad debt, we use something called the Debt Avalanche method. Here's how it actually works. List every debt you currently carry and rank them not by balance but by interest rate, highest to lowest. You keep making minimum payments on everything, but you throw every extra dollar you can find at the debt sitting at the very top of that list, the one with the highest interest rate. Once that one is completely gone, you roll that entire payment amount into the next highest rate debt, then the next one after that. Like an actual avalanche gathering speed as it rolls downhill, faster and faster with every debt it clears. Mathematically, this is the fastest possible way to become debt-free, because you're always attacking the debt costing you the most money first. It isn't always the most emotionally satisfying method in the short term. Some people prefer knocking out small balances first for quick psychological wins. But if speed and math are your priority, the debt avalanche wins every single time. Picture it in practice for a second. Say you're carrying a credit card at 22% interest, a car loan at 7%, and a student loan at 5%. Under the debt avalanche, every spare dollar attacks that 22% credit card first, no matter how small or large the balance actually is, because that rate is silently costing you the most every single month it exists. Once that card hits zero, the full payment amount you were throwing at it doesn't disappear. It slides straight over to the car loan, which now gets attacked twice as hard. It's the same total money moving through your budget, just aimed with much sharper precision. Stage 2 is your emergency fund, and this one is non-negotiable before you ever start investing aggressively. You need 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses sitting in an account you can access instantly. No penalties, no waiting periods, no phone calls to plead your case. Why does this matter so much? Because without this fund, a single car repair, a single medical bill, a single unexpected job loss, and you're forced to either pull money straight out of your investments at exactly the wrong moment, or worse, go right back into the same high-interest debt we just worked so hard to eliminate. Your emergency fund isn't wasted money sitting still doing nothing. It's the shield protecting every other phase of this plan from getting wiped out by one bad month. Stage 3 is building your credit profile, and this stage is quietly more important than most people ever realize. A strong credit score isn't about proving you can spend money freely. It's about proving to lenders that you're reliable enough to be trusted with better interest rates on everything from mortgages to auto loans down the road. And better rates translate directly into thousands of dollars saved over the course of your lifetime. The simplest way to build it is almost boring, honestly. Use a credit card for small planned purchases you were already going to make anyway: groceries, gas, a streaming subscription you already pay for, and pay the full balance off in full every single month without exception. You're not trying to prove you can carry a balance. You're proving you can manage credit responsibly on repeat for years at a time. Stage 4 is reducing your tax liability. And this is exactly where a lot of money quietly leaks out of people's financial plans without them ever noticing it happening. You have two main categories of investment accounts working in your favor here. Pre-tax accounts, like a 401k through your employer or a traditional IRA, where your contributions reduce your taxable income today and the money grows completely untouched until retirement. And post-tax accounts, like a Roth IRA, where you pay taxes on the money right now, but every single dollar of growth after that comes out completely tax-free later in life. Using a strategic mix of both isn't just a savings tactic, it's what's called tax bracket optimization. You're deliberately deciding when you want to pay the IRS. Now, while you're in a lower bracket, or later once your investments have grown substantially, minimizing your total tax liability across your entire lifetime instead of just the current calendar year. Someone early in their career sitting in a lower tax bracket right now often leans harder into a Roth IRA, paying a small tax bill today while their bracket is cheap, so decades of future growth come out completely untouched. Someone in their peak earning years sitting in a much higher bracket often leans harder into a 401k or traditional IRA instead, taking the deduction now while it's worth the most, and dealing with taxes later once income and often the bracket itself has dropped back down. And for anyone thinking ahead about accessing retirement funds before the standard age of 59 and a half, there's a lesser-known option called the 72T strategy, which under specific IRS rules allows you to take substantially equal periodic payments from a retirement account penalty-free, years earlier than most people ever realize is even legally possible. It isn't for everyone, and it absolutely requires careful planning, but it's proof that early retirement isn't nearly as locked down as most people assume it is. That's your entire foundation finished. Bad debt eliminated the smart way, an emergency fund standing guard around everything else, credit working for you instead of quietly against you, and taxes optimized instead of ignored completely. A drifter never builds this foundation. A dreamer talks about building this foundation. A doer actually builds it stage by stage and moves straight on to Phase 3. Phase 3 is where this entire plan stops feeling like saving money and starts feeling like building an actual machine, because now we're talking about multiple income streams. Here's a way to think about it that I come back to constantly. Picture Spider-Man hanging off the side of a building by a single strand of web. One strand can absolutely hold him for a while, but the second that strand gets damaged, cut, or stressed by a gust of wind he never saw coming, he's in serious trouble very quickly. One job is one strand of web, that's really all it is. One employer, one paycheck, one single point of failure. Layoffs happen constantly. Entire industries shift overnight. Companies restructure without any real warning at all. If that one strand snaps and you have nothing else supporting you underneath it, you fall. But Spider-Man doesn't actually rely on just one strand ever. He builds an entire web, dozens of interconnected strands, so that if any single one gets cut, the rest of the structure still holds him perfectly in place. That's exactly what multiple income streams do for your finances. A side business built around a skill you already have. Freelance work in the evenings after the kids go to bed. A small rental property. A digital product you built once and now sell repeatedly. None of these need to replace your main job overnight. They just need to exist strand by strand until you've built a web strong enough that no single event can take you all the way down. And here's what most people completely miss about this stage. You don't need 5 brand new skills to build 5 separate income streams. You need one genuinely valuable skill you already have, plus the willingness to package it, sell it, and repeat it in a few different directions at once. A teacher can tutor privately in the evenings and also build course content on the side. A nurse can consult, create educational material, or manage scheduling for other providers. The underlying skill stays exactly the same. The web just gets wider around it. Think about how ordinary this actually looks in real life. A warehouse worker who's handy with tools starts fixing small appliances on weekends for neighbors, then turns that into a real side business with actual repeat customers. A stay-at-home parent with a sharp eye for design starts managing a few Etsy listings from the kitchen table, then slowly scales it into a second income that eventually outpaces the household's main paycheck. None of it happened overnight, and none of it required quitting a job on day one. It just required one more strand, then another, added deliberately over time instead of left to chance. This is also where the money from Phase 2 starts to matter even more than before, because every extra income stream you build gives you more capital available to reinvest, which brings us directly into the fourth and final phase, the one that actually gets you all the way to your freedom figure. Phase 4 is building true passive income, and this is where everything from the first three phases finally starts compounding into something real and tangible. Here's the trap: almost everyone falls straight into the moment extra income starts showing up from their new side business or a raise at work. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it is one of the most silent wealth killers in all of personal finance. You get a bonus, so you upgrade the car. You get a raise, so you upgrade the apartment. Your income grows steadily, but your bank account stays exactly where it always was, because your spending quietly grew right alongside it, step for step. The doers, the people who actually reach their freedom figure years ahead of everyone around them, do the exact opposite. They reinvest their cash flow to hit their freedom figure, instead of letting it slowly evaporate into a slightly nicer lifestyle they didn't even really need. Every extra dollar coming in from that side business, that freelance project, that raise, gets funneled straight back into appreciating assets instead of everyday consumption. Where does that reinvestment actually go? Two places primarily. First, low-cost index funds, something tracking the S&P 500 is the classic time-tested example, with dividends set to automatically reinvest rather than get paid out to you as cash. That single-setting, automatic dividend reinvestment is quietly one of the most powerful tools in all of long-term investing, because it means your money keeps buying you more shares, which then earn you more dividends, which then buy you even more shares again, completely on autopilot in the background of your life. Second, real estate leverage. This is where you use a mortgage, essentially someone else's money, to control an entire asset while a tenant's monthly rent payment covers that mortgage on your behalf. Done correctly, you're not just building equity every single month, you're building it largely with somebody else's cash flow instead of exclusively your own. That's leverage finally working in your favor instead of against you, which is the exact opposite of the bad debt we eliminated all the way back in Phase 2. Picture a modest rental property worth $200,000. You put 20% down, $40,000 of your own money, and a mortgage covers the rest. If the tenant's rent covers the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and upkeep every month, with a bit left over, you now control a $200,000 appreciating asset for a fraction of its actual price. And somebody else's monthly payment is steadily paying that mortgage down for you, year after year, whether the market is having a great year or a rough one. Layer these two engines together, index funds compounding quietly in the background, real estate slowly paying itself off through tenants month after month, and you start to see exactly how completely ordinary people with completely ordinary jobs reach a freedom figure of $1 million, or Emily's $1.25 million, in a fraction of the time traditional advice ever promised them it would take. So let's bring this all the way back around, start to finish. 4 phases. Define your freedom figure using the times 25 rule and the 4% safe withdrawal rate. Build your foundation by killing bad debt with the debt avalanche, protecting yourself with a real emergency fund, strengthening your credit profile, and optimizing your taxes with pre-tax and post-tax accounts working together. Build multiple income streams so you're never hanging from a single strand of web ever again. And reinvest every bit of extra cash flow into appreciating assets instead of lifestyle inflation, until passive income eventually replaces the paycheck completely and permanently. Remember the 3 types of people we talked about at the very start of this video. The drifter, coasting along with no real goal at all. The dreamer, who has the goal but never actually builds the plan behind it. And the doer, who takes every single phase we just walked through and actually executes it, stage by stage, year by year, without waiting for the perfect moment. I'm not going to pretend any of this is effortless, because if it was easy, everyone would already be doing it. It takes real discipline in Phase 2 when the debt feels endless and the progress feels slow. It takes genuine hustle in Phase 3 when you're building a side income after an already long, exhausting day at your main job. It takes patience in Phase 4, watching index funds and rental income compound slower than you'd honestly like some months. But 5 years from now, that time is going to pass regardless of what you decide to do today. The only real question left is whether you spend those 5 years as a drifter, a dreamer, or a doer. Retirement isn't about age, it's about freedom, and freedom has an actual formula behind it. You now know exactly what that formula is, phase by phase. If this video gave you real clarity today, hit subscribe right now, because David Marshall Finance is building an entire library of blueprints just like this one. And next week's video might be the exact push you need to finally move from dreamer to doer. I'll see you in the next one.